Yes, let's get him in here
Luigi.
right now. Luigi, there he is.
What's up, guys?
Welcome,
What's going on, man?
How are
Good.
you?
How you guys doing?
We are doing great, man. It's great to have you on the show. And I got to tell you, your man Eric Kang made a request of me a long time ago to drop a 50 Cent song when you came on the show. But I wasn't going to do that because, and I'll tell you why, I don't like catching our guests off guard. You know what I mean? We did that one time and I was like, I didn't like that, man. I don't like messing with our guests like that. So
I'm gonna show my age, throwing a little 50 Cent on there.
Well, I could throw some 50 Cent on there for you. I was DJing in clubs when that was out, so I'm showing my age. You know what I mean? But anyways, it's great to have you here, man. A fellow Italian. You know what I mean? I'm sure you may have recognized the name Jimmy2times from the movie Goodfellas. So
of course,
yes,
of course, great
Indeed.
movie.
Yes, one of my favorites, man. So Luigi, like I said, is the head of DeFi at Avalabs. Very excited to have you on the show. What we usually like to do when we start off is just kind of welcome our guests. And you're someone that I feel like everybody in the space already knows, man. You know what I mean? Whether they know you personally or know who you are, you're kind of the man. So I would like to get just a little bit of background from you, just for any new listeners or new watchers. Just kind of where you come from, how you got involved with Avalabs, and just what your background is, man. We'd love to hear it.
Sure. Yeah. So, how I got into this space and sort of, my career and everything, it really started in traditional finance. I worked at Citigroup for about 7 years, trading derivatives and other products, and then really got tired of kind of working for a really big company. Really got tired of the Wall Street grind. So just kind of up and quit. Went to go work for a professor of mine from university, and we were working on like valuation stuff and all this kind of like M&A stuff. And then at that point in time, one of my friends was working with Novogratz, and he, really pulled me into the Ethereum ecosystem in a big way. This is like 2015, 16 time period. And I had already dabbled with crypto. I had bought and sold it, Bitcoin back in the day, and sold it too early, etc. And so, I had my own startup, no different than Firestorm here. And this was in 2017. We were trying to do some really interesting stuff with content on blockchain. And that's when I realized like this stuff ain't going to scale. And so started to really dive into different L1s. That's how I found Avalanche. But given my background, DeFi was always super interesting to me. And so I joined Avalabs, let's call it 22 months ago. Like almost 2 years.
Almost 2 years.
Yeah, almost 2 years now. So yeah, it's been a hell of a ride, a blur, to be honest with you.
I'd imagine.
And I can
a lot of fun.
I can imagine this is barely scratching the surface yet, right? Many more years. I mean, looking at the speed with which things are being released, I think there's a lot more to this ride than what we've experienced so far, huh?
Yeah, I think so too. I think the tech is maturing in a real way. I think the BD and everything is sort of humming along. I really think the team has just a really solid momentum and like sort of tailwind behind them right now. So I'm super pumped about this year. Last year was like fascinating. It was like, coming off the high of 2021. Last year was everything that 2021 wasn't. It's just a slow grind, not even slow. It's a very aggressive grind, right into bear market, which is cool. But this is like the better part of the bear market, where it's like more chill. You're starting to see some interesting ideas, less FOMO, less like everybody trying to chase some random narratives and things like that. So this is the best time to be around. And this is when the seeds are sown.
I mean, like the experience we kind of had is similar, right? It was so much noise, both from personal perspective as well as business perspective. So much noise, and it was so difficult to filter out and organize the information you were getting bombarded with. Now, that massive amount of noise is down. There isn't 50 protocols launching every day. There's only 5. So in that sense, it's easier to track.
But are they all forks of each other?
3 forks to other stuff, but listen, now is the time to build, as we always said. And I guess, in that vein, today was a huge day, man. Like lots of announcements.
Yes.
I don't know which one we should start with, but I'm personally super excited about two of them. If you don't mind, do you mind talking to us a little bit about Hyper SDK? I mean, I know that just dropped.
Yeah.
What do we do with it? I obviously have my own ideas, but let's hear it from you. You know, more valuable than me.
Yeah, Hyper SDK is super exciting. You know, heads up and congrats to Patrick O'Grady, VP of Engineering. You know, this is something he's been working on for about 6 months or so. And, you know, him and I have chatted a bunch about this, but this is like, for us, the vision of Avalanche, and sort of, I think what a lot of people miss when they look at Avalanche. But Hyper SDK is effectively an SDK that allows people to build a custom virtual machine in a very easy way. So what does that mean, right? Well, we already know that Avalanche has the fastest finality because of the consensus is fraud. Well, now we're also bringing potentially the ability to code probably one of the fastest virtual machines out there. So you combine super fast, you know, virtual machine with the super fast finality, and you end up with, you know, sort of a very scalable blockchain that can compete with something in traditional finance or in Web 2. And, you know, I think one of the things to position about the Hyper SDK that's really important is, you know, a lot of times Avalab's, given the way it was doing development, was sort of not, I guess, very open in terms of the developer ecosystem. Hyper SDK is going to be everything but that. It is going to be completely open. It's open source right now. We want people to submit PRs, comment on it, develop with it. You know, there'll be a Discord. So we want this to be very collaborative. And hopefully, you know, the future is a world where people can deploy super fast blockchain with not a lot of code, and that doesn't have sort of the bottlenecks that current ones do.
I think there were like a couple things that caught my attention. First, Patrick spent 6 months on it, okay? Because I've seen him do stuff, and the amount of time himself and the rest of the team take for certain things, 6 months is a long time, guys. 6 months mean there's a lot of good stuff in there just without even like digging into the code, right? Number one. Number two, as I was like looking through this, I was thinking this actually has immediate implications for applications or projects that want to go to a subnet, especially if they're thinking about building their own custom virtual machines, right? And you know, I was a little bit selfish, I'm not going to lie. I was thinking from the Dexalot perspective at first, because that's a subnet we recently launched,
yeah,
right? And comparing the architecture that we've seen in TradFi ecosystems for building an exchange or building a trading system, Hyper SDK immediately allows to replicate the same kind of idea, except instead of closed-end servers, you use multiple chains that natively communicate with each other. That can come up quickly, and it gives you quite a lot of scale. I mean, I tweeted, I said, infinite scale. Me and Luigi was recently on a podcast talking about what infinite scale means, but practically speaking, it gives you all the scale that you may need from what I can see.
Right.
Again, theoretical, but I can't tell you how excited I am to sort of give this a shot. And last thing,
the key is that it can be optimized, right? That's the key to whatever your use case is. And that's the difference between something like the EVM, which is very like general purpose, kind of tries to do everything.
Exactly. And also, if you look at, you know, Patrick's first or second tweet, I forget now, he says Hyper was given intentionally to keep it as our North Star, and the goal with this was performance ahead of anything else, right?
Yeah.
I think now Avalanche has proven itself to the point where we know the consensus works. We know the network works. We know we have a great community. Now it's talking about world domination, where you give it the performance to support real world applications like Visa. I'm just going to throw it out there because it's very cliche. Anyways, before I get carried away, awesome. We appreciate you guys shipping this. And needless to say, on behalf of the Dexalot team, this is something we have been looking forward to.
Definitely take a look at. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think with the local test he ran for simple transfers, there were about 40,000 transactions per second. Now that's got to be tested in production, you know, so I want to come, you know, all the excitement, but I think it's safe to say that, like, you know, we're aiming for, and he was right, the North Star is to do something truly, you know, mission critical and sort of production ready for the real world, not the blockchain world.
I mean, like, you know, again, just to put it into perspective, Avalanche, when it came out, the numbers that were advertised that were achieved in the test networks was about 4,500 TPS on like simple transfers on X-Chain, right? This is an order of magnitude improvement over what we've seen before. And this is for smart contract environments rather than just transfers. So like, guys, he said it, open, collaborative, go to the Discord, go look at the code, go try to break it. Like, I'm telling you from my personal experience, trying to break some of the stuff that's being produced by Avalab is by far the most fun, but usually unsuccessful thing to do. But it's still very good to learn. So go give it a shot. And, you know, the devs are actually accessible in Discord.
Definitely. Patrick was just on the show a couple weeks ago.
Yep. So
I missed that one, was he?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
He was.
Oh,
and like I was trying to get stuff out of him, and he was alluding now I realize, of course, he was alluding to Hyper SDK. He did use the word SDK. He said we're building tools to do this stuff, but obviously he didn't give us much. And you know, today is the day that we found out. It's quite good.
Yeah. You can catch that on our YouTube, by the way, guys.
Yes. I was gonna say, you know, Hyper SDK was just one of many. I also saw that cross-chain transaction signing dropped for Core.
I did see that too. Yeah, I didn't even know that was coming. To be honest with you.
I mean, okay. Do you mind just giving us a little, or like I know what I understand of it, but I don't know how much you have.
Yeah. So I don't have a ton, but as I understand it, basically what this allows is seamless movement across chains to execute transactions. So whether you're going from Ethereum to Avalanche or Avalanche to Dexalot as a subnet, the core wallet will make that super seamless for you. So you really don't even know that you're kind of moving chains, which is huge.
It's amazing. It's basically a UX improvement immediately if you just use Core, right? Like think of it this way. So right now, Dexalot is a dual chain architecture. You deposit on C chain. Then if you're using another wallet, you have to do an explicit network switch so that you switch your RPC endpoint, you're connected, and then you send orders, you cancel orders, whatnot. Core now supports the ability to not worry about that extra network switch, because even I sometimes forget which network I'm on. I'm doing a withdrawal, and like, you know, I'm like, this thing. And it's not really something Dexalot could solve. And now we have a wallet that solved it, right? Massive user experience improvements. Not just Dexalot also, right? The important thing is this is the type of thing that brings people to use the technology as a whole. If they don't know what's happening under the covers, because imagine, people always talk about this in TradFi. Your grandmother is not going to know which subnet she needs to be on or how to use it or how to switch. If the wallet takes that away, abstracts it, you're going to acquire a lot more users, right? So I thought that was a very powerful statement today. Together with Hyper SDK, combining the two actually creates, I think, opens up a lot of real-world applications to be potentially moved to the blockchain. I also saw a Loco partnership.
Yes.
Can we hear a little bit about
that?
Loco's a big one. Yes.
Yeah, Loco's a big one. Loco is, I think, coined the Twitch of India, so to speak. They raised $42 million in one of the largest rounds in India, fastest growing startup in India. And they are building a subnet. Their subnet, I believe, is on testnet right now. And so it's not far off. But yeah, they entered into a partnership with Avalanche, which we're super excited about. They boast 50 million users across their whole platform. Cumulative, and I think actives are like 5 million plus. So we're very excited. Yeah, I mean, this is, I wrote this Substack about what I call the Pikachu subnet. Like, this is the idea, though, right? I mean,
so you've been teasing it. Now I get it.
Yeah.
Lots of
this is the idea. Having a bunch of subnets with millions of users that use Avalanche port messaging. If you're in DeFi and you're not on Avalanche, you're not going to have access to that flow. That's a miss for you. So, people always ask me, well, why should I deploy on Avalanche? My answer is simple. I don't think you can afford not to, because you're not going to have access to these types of things. And that's like a loss for your users, for your whoever, the protocol is that, is collecting fees. So, we're super pumped about Loco. I think this is like I think it's cool that we won in India. I think it's cool that we won one of the largest and fastest growing startups with a lot of users. And I think it's cool that we have more for our gaming narrative, as esports is huge and they're massive esports partnership there. So very excited. More to come. March will be big.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like games last year and continue to be the biggest sort of shift that I personally see. Like games just didn't have this type of an open economy before. So in that sense, amazing to see that, Avalanche is really, really penetrating this side of the market. I think it's very cool. And there's a lot of games launching. I've seen a lot of planned launches this year. It's going to be really awesome. There's going to be plenty of games to be played, Jimmy.
Well,
I know you're a game guy, so am I. So
we're going to be playing them on this channel, so you better believe it. We're going to have lots more Dexalot Got Game streams.
Yes,
and, awesome. We do have a couple questions from the chat, so we can either do those as they come, or we can save them for later. But I do want to shout out all our new followers.
I have a statement here before the questions. The statement says Luigi is cute. So I've been trying to get my producer to put that on the screen, but listen, that's the first. We never had that on stream before, so congratulations.
No, we've definitely had a Firestorm is cute several times. Who's telling a lie now? Come on. No, we do have a lot of new friends in the chat. Just want to shout all you guys out. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I'm Jimmy2times. Firestorm is my co-host. We are from Dexalot, and today we're talking with Luigi, the head of DeFi at Avalabs. This is where all the real Dexalot alpha is at. And today we're kind of getting, you just heard March is going to be huge, guys. So I'm very excited what's coming down the pipe. March is end of March.
That's your alpha. That's the alpha I'll give.
That's the alpha horn right there. So had to sound it off again. But it does look like Crypto Kindergarten had a pretty early question. Let me go find this one from our
at the beginning of the
right at the beginning. He was like before we even started. A question for Luigi that I ask everyone: what TradFi assets are you most optimistic or excited about bringing to Web3?
Good question. So there's two things to think about here. There's like long-term RWA kind of stuff, and then there's also like the short term. In the short term, when nobody talks about and like kind of frustrates me is commodities. I'm not sure why nobody puts commodities on chain. Why nobody's made a very concerted effort to do this. Like I'd love to see perps on lumber, perps on like soybeans and oil and copper and gold and silver. Like seeing all those on chain is like a perfect use case for something that will allow for options, collateralized assets, right? Because if you have GLD, let's say that's the ETF for gold, it's not easy to collateralize that asset. Right. You probably have to go get a loan from like Fidelity or something like that. It would take a long time, a lot of paperwork. So it'd be interesting to see those assets in DeFi and give people access outside the United States to be able to use them. I can imagine something like a commodity-based GLP type of product or something like that. That would be cool. So commodities is one that I'm super excited about, that I feel like it gets overlooked a lot, and everybody's so focused on like tokenized funds and a lot of these security type things that are a lot harder to do. Like kind of like the effort we did with KKR, which is really cool, but also not easy. So in the short term, my focus would be on commodities. In the long term, and we'll be also alluding to this in the future as well, but being able to use DeFi for, I want to make sure I say this the right way. I gotta be careful. Being able to use DeFi for traditional finance type transactions has always been like sort of the not sexy, but massive opportunity for this space. So, like you could think of something like doing an interest rate swap using a protocol, an AMM protocol, being able to facilitate FX trading with different types of AMMs or CLOBs. I think all of this is super, this is like kind of why we're here.
Sure.
And so, yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking for. Great question, by the way.
Yeah, that's Crypto Kindergarten. He is a regular here in the CLOB. So shout out to Crypto Kindergarten for
not a kindergarten question.
Yeah, pretty interesting
Not
stuff.
exactly, not a kindergarten question.
I've actually seen, if I remember correctly, Paxos tried to do some
Yes.
commodity-based, well, tokens that represent some commodity ownership. I don't know the state of it, but of course, moving that into, yeah,
we talked to them. It was very it was pretty arduous to like kind of get it on chain. The fees were high. So I think like there's just hasn't been a big effort here by the space, and I'm kind of curious to see why. So you know, when I have a minute to breathe, I might, you know, take some time to kind of find who the right players in the space who can attack this are, because I think it would be huge. Like people like trading, you know, crypto. I don't think they'd mind trading commodities. Like oil was negative. A year later, it went to 100. These are volatile assets too, so they're good to trade.
It's pretty funny because, you know, if you watch Bloomberg or CNBC most of your time, right? You know, shout out to my TradFi ex co-workers and whatnot. You know, you're gonna think that crypto is volatile, but then when you look at, I don't know, some emerging markets FX assets, or you know, something that can actually go negative $40 and then come back to $100. Bro, I've never seen that in crypto. The worst it will get to is zero. It's never
even
gonna go negative.
Even currencies. Think about like Argentina, Venezuela. Think about like the Greek, Turkish lira, the Greek crisis, debt crisis. Those bonds, I was trading them back then. They were moving, you know, multiple points a day. But like, and I know everybody when they think of commodities, they always focus on gold. But I think like the more interesting ones are like the useful commodities, because then you can also add value for people like home builders who want to hedge out some of their risk, some of the farmers that want to hedge out their risk. Like I think you would see more of that, like in like 2020 and 2021 during this whole like COVID boom. I think a lot of people would have loved to have access to, you know, sort of hedge out their lumber risk. I mean, I was building a house, so I would love to do it. The thing went up 10x.
So during COVID, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing I would add here, I guess, on top of commodities is just FX, right? I mean, look, think about what the original Bitcoin white paper is: peer-to-peer, you know, cashless transaction system. So under the covers, it really is trying to. Bitcoin was at least a value transfer mechanism, and all FX today is OTC transfers that settle in multi-day cycles, right? This is basically an asset class with Avalanche, with Gen 3 blockchains, instantaneously transmitted from one point to the other, 24/7, never closes, and settles immediately. Yes, FX trading is near instantaneous also, but that's the trade, not the settlement, and crypto solves that. I think
some chains call that optimistic settlement.
Right.
That's a new thing.
It's a new term. I've also heard that, but I mean, it's kind of true, right? Like the FX stuff is very natural to move to crypto, to be honest with you. Sure, there is some like physical stuff under the covers that happens later, but at least if you can optimize the earlier part of the chain, there is value out there. And I think, you know, this was going to be a question that I wanted to ask you. You know, we see some moves in the regulatory space now, right? Do you think the regulatory activity, particularly that we see from SEC, is that something that hurts DeFi, or do you think it helps DeFi? What's your view on that?
Yeah, love the regulation questions. It's a challenge. I mean, look, there's no other way to say it that the United States, in particular, has taken, I think, a more staunch view than anybody, you know, myself included as a citizen, you know, would have wanted, especially in the space. So there's no way around that. Like that's a risk for sure in this space. Ultimately, you know, because of this space is global, it's very difficult, I think, for them, because it seems like they're acting in unison at this point. Doesn't seem like the rest of the world is sort of, you know, working with them. If this was like a global coordinated effort, that would be a risk, a big risk. And so regulation is, I think, scary for DeFi, but only for sort of some of these assets that, you know, are pretty obviously not, let's say, above board. So, you know, anything is clearly a derivative, anything's clearly a security, like, yeah, I mean, you're going to be at risk. So it's, I still think DeFi as an infrastructure can replace traditional finance rails, and that has nothing, that's less of a regulatory concern. But we have a lot of conversations with like, bulge bracket banks and TradFi institutions, and sometimes the first statement is we can't touch crypto, which is fine. Like, we have ways around that. And so ultimately what we end up doing is kind of making bad optimizations for what we're building, with these institutions because of that. But I firmly believe that a lot of crypto is regulatory arbitrage, and so over time,
Exactly.
over time, like if people adopt this, there won't be. It would be very difficult to just put your hand down on it for them.
I mean,
for the regulators.
People always are like, oh, the governments are coming. Like, people are afraid. I mean, rightfully so. Regulation, particularly, not so well educated type of it that initially comes, is going to cause prices to go down. Like, this, I think, is a general trend that we've observed in traditional finance, not even crypto, right?
Mhm.
Equities market had the Reg NMS regulation that happened in the earlier 2019-90s. And it actually created a lot of opportunities for people. And I think the same thing is going to happen in crypto, where we're going to see, oh, my kid wants to show up to the stream. I apologize for
It's
that.
okay. I locked the door.
Yeah.
My kids can't come in.
I should have locked it. I'm sorry, guys.
Pikachu pictures.
All good, all good.
All good.
Let's actually move on to a question from the chat really quick. I know that Crypto Kindergarten had another one, so forgive me, guys. I'm doing my best.
Yeah, he had a
here.
security question on exploits for seamless subnet switching. I don't have an answer for him. That's
Okay.
not me. That's not my thing.
I think I was looking for, oh yeah, security exploits. Yep, that one. Okay. Good catch, Luigi. Way ahead of me.
I'm reading
I
the
actually
chat.
I see GC in the chat.
Ooh.
GC
One of
talking
our old guests who's been around a long time.
Yes.
I don't see questions though. I only statesman from him. So if he has a
Well,
question, we'll obviously take that.
He had a good point about nickel.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, that's even true for FX markets sometimes, right? Like, ECNs and exchanges will typically bust stuff depending on the situation, right?
Yeah, I think also like Circle and Uniswap put out a paper pretty recently, going through sort of the opportunity for FX and sort of different types of crypto that can be involved there, and like eliminating the Herstat risk. So if anybody's really interested in this topic, I suggested they take a look at that. If you hear my kids screaming in the background, I apologize.
Yeah. I know a thing or two about that also. It's all good. So I guess if we change gears, man, let's talk about a little bit more, optimistic stuff. What do you think is going to be the next big trend shifts? Like, we've seen quite a number of things that were truly big and, change stuff, like exchanges and trading, AMMs, now hopefully CLOBs, right? Perpetuals. Like, what do you think is going to be the next big, or what do you think is not yet properly explored in terms of DeFi?
Oh man, good question. Yeah, I think options still leave a lot to be desired across the whole space. I think there's a lot of room there to, sort of really improve like sort of the financial aspect of that. A lot of these protocols either have an issue in terms of liquidity, or they're not able to sort of mimic a lot of what's going on in TradFi. So I think, we have two that will be launching pretty soon. It's been a long time coming. We're pretty excited. But options in general is sort of a missing piece. They don't allow for all the hedging that you want to see, and sort of like structured products that people would like to see. So I think that's definitely a piece that we need. I'm also interested in, let's see here, options is one, sort of structured products. That could be really interesting. I know we launched the Intain subnet. They're going to be doing more like asset-backed securities and things like that. So that's pretty exciting. But we'd like to see that for DeFi in general, and building interesting like fixed income type products. I worked on the CDS desk. And so I think crypto could be really interesting to see some. I know some protocols have tried to build like a credit default swap product, but I haven't seen anything that's sort of really materialized or caught my eye. So I think that would be exciting as well. we just need to increase the sophistication of like these financial products on chain in a big way. A lot of these things are super basic.
How do we, so, fully agree with you, right? These financial tools that we have in TradFi still don't exist in DeFi. There's first the technical aspect. How do we build them in such a way that decentralized, transparent, and it works? It's not an easy feat. But then also, how do we bridge the gap between the current audience of crypto with these products? Because in reality, options tremendously useful to folks who trade regularly, who have a financial sort of background, but it's difficult for retail to pick it up. So I almost want to say, while we need these tools, at the same time, we also need to figure out a way to get more sophisticated users, whether it's institutions or whether it's pro traders, into the space. How do we bridge the gap between the two? Because imagine if you're a project that's building structured products, how do you time yourself such that you have the audience that's arriving while you're finishing the product? It's one of those things that always, What do you think?
Good
How do
question.
we do?
I mean, so it depends on how you like kind of your view of like the landscape. Like a lot of people talk about DeFi and like they're like, oh, we need to like simplify it and all these things. But we don't want to simplify it to the point where people get wrecked because like I've seen a lot of people get wrecked on Ameritrade trading, YOLO options. And they probably shouldn't be doing that. Options super risky product. If you don't know what you're doing, you are going to lose money like 9 times out of 10 over and over and over again. And the lure of hitting that, 90, the 1% chance that you get this like 100x return is what lures people to consistently play with these products. And so I firmly believe that these more sophisticated products are for institutions and more financial savvy folks. And then the more simple products, payments, simple trading, that's for retail, because you shouldn't be trying to, structure some complicated CDO, when your like, day job is not financially related. Like
Exactly.
you're gonna get wrecked. So
exactly.
And that's one of the problems with DeFi right now is that they sort of tailor to retail when some of these things are complicated. So, I see Eric in the comments talking about the 50x leverage. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's always been the issue. Mankind cannot help themselves from the lure.
Degens disagree. They think 50x
human
is
beings
the
are
start.
degens. Human beings are degens. We've shown it over and over again in history. They love it.
There's a lot of good conversation going on in the chat today, guys. We appreciate all the comments.
I couldn't finish the previous point. I apologize. So what I was like wanting to say actually is regulation is going to come. Even if the first iteration is bad, it's going to improve, right? When the regulation improves, it's going to create the space for these institutions to move in. When they decide to do the move in, they're going to find, hopefully, a very nice institutionalized subnet within which they can do, I don't know, collateralized real-world asset-based credit or structured product trading, etc. I already see some structured products built on top of, other protocols, for example, right? Like, I think people are exploring ideas, but I think the key is, again, sort of onboarding these pros or institutions,
well,
I'm going to say.
That's a good point. And sort of the issue there is if you really think about it, like in order to participate in DeFi as an institution, you most likely are not based out of the US. You most likely went through, some complex gymnastics to set up an entity into some weird, jurisdiction, not weird, but different jurisdiction. And so, who are you attracting when you do things like that? Not the most sophisticated, financially savvy institutions in the world right now, right? Because from their standpoint, like it's too risky for them to touch. And, I know Morgan on our team, myself, we talk to them, back to back all day long. And, these are important conversations. And obviously this was something that Emin in particular focused on with the future of Avalanche from the beginning. And that was to digitize the world's assets, to provide custom, flexible infrastructure where people could deploy things on blockchains that were regulatory compliant, And so, I will say this is an effort that we are, all gas, no brakes on right now. And so I think you'll be hearing more on this. And that's my Jet fan, for anybody who knows football.
Let's go.
That's my Jet fan statement. So, I think we'll be releasing a lot more on that. But this is the goal is to increase the amount of institutions in the space.
Before I hand the reins over to Jimmy, I saw Absolute Zero make a comment, which I thought is pretty cool. Absolute Zero, if you guys don't know him, he's the guy with the threads. That's how I like talk to him. But anyways,
there's a lot of threads.
Every now and then he'll write some threads.
Wait, is there someone who does threads in the crypto space?
No,
do people do threads?
Yeah. He said they almost banned mutual funds back after the 1929 crash, and today ETFs are some of the most traded assets. Right?
Yeah.
I think again, history has a lot of examples like this. I think it's a very good point. People are afraid of change. They're going to approach things with a stick first. They're going to be like, no. And then eventually, once people understand why it's cool, it becomes hopefully mainstream. Anyways,
yeah, another
Jimmy.
example is like, so when I was at Citigroup, it was when Dodd-Frank was being implemented, which was after the financial crisis. And I tell people all the time, like, when we were doing interest rate swaps before Dodd-Frank, they would settle bilaterally, meaning like if Citi and Nomura did a swap, basically they would each hold their piece of it, and that's it. When they want to unwind it, you call that bank and you unwind it. After Dodd-Frank, they introduced this whole clearinghouse mechanism, so everybody just faces the clearinghouse. And basically what they did was they took the risk that was disparate and they put it in one place, which is CME. But if this technology was robust at that time, I think they would have selected something like this instead, which was a much more optimal way to do bilateral swaps. So it's just timing sometimes, but ultimately, if you have the better tech and better infrastructure, I think you'll end up in a lead.
I mean, this tech is sticky, right? It takes a while for stuff to migrate. We just need to continue burning the candle long enough for it to happen, really. Yeah.
Yep. Persist. That's what I've learned in this space. If you persist, like good things will happen. It's easy to get sort of like exhausted or like tired or whatever, and just like turn it off, like I'll be back in a year. I've seen too many people do that. That is always a mistake.
It's like Ishan Ashina from Sekiro says, hesitation is defeat. You know what I mean? Anyway, let me see if do we have time for any more questions, guys? I think we're running like kind of low on time. I have a couple questions.
We didn't talk about Dexalot at all.
Well, we talk about Dexalot every week.
We'd love to hear about Dexalot, man. Shill it to us. We love Dexalot.
Have you heard of this Dexalot thing?
I mean, and here we are, 50-something minutes in. Oh man, shiny cake saw my punching ball. Yeah.
You got a punching ball. That's nice.
So
we'd love to hear your thoughts, man. It's been such an exciting day, and we got you here. We wanted to touch on what's going on at Avalab.
Sure. No, I mean, look, we're excited about Dexalot too, right? Like, I mean, there aren't, like, the only other CLOB on chain that I know of in a big way is Serum, and obviously that's not worked out well, but it did have a lot of activity when it did, right? And so it's super possible to do. It's interesting. It's obviously an efficient way to trade. So I think, like, as this team continues to build and continues to iterate on this product, we're going to see some really exciting things. It's already so much cheaper than when it was on C chain, which is exciting. Things like the update from Core Wallet is going to make the UX better, and then continuously building upon that to allow for getting that natural order flow is where the game changes. So pumped to see you guys continue to work on that, and I think that'll be it.
I think I should have started the show with this, right? Like, we've been working pretty hard to create liquidity, and when I say liquidity, I mean price and depth for the ecosystem, right? If you look at the prices on Dexalot right now, because of the capital efficiency, because of the structure, we actually have the ability to provide 10 to 15 basis point wide spreads, which means best possible price for the end users, right? Obviously, this is a game. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint, so we need to continue to do this. But, that was our initial intention, and hopefully we'll actually start producing results for our ecosystem in DeFi that's comparable to CeFi, and, we'll be one of the many people holding a flashlight so that people see where they need to go, right? that's kind of where we're at today. We appreciate your kind words, of course.
Yeah, getting your cosign means a lot, man. So thank you for that. But I got a couple questions before we let you go, real quick.
Sure.
First of all, this has been this is what happens every time. I already felt it. I'm going to have to loosen up my hat because whenever we have these kind of conversations, man, my brain actually grows a little bit bigger. And I saw our guy Boogie B in the chat actually said the same thing. So would you be willing to come back to In the CLOB sometime and talk to us again about what's going on at Avalabs? And
sure.
Awesome, man.
We need to pick the 3-4 announcement days, man. Like those are the days where Luigi just appears and is like, here are all the things happening, you know?
Well,
pull me out on the 3 announcement days. There'll be more.
Exactly. We'll figure it out. But we always like having the Avalab
play
team
50
on
Cent
here.
next time though.
Yeah, well, that was going to be my second question.
Questions, or what are we doing?
I get a request from all of our guests, right? Because we do some music on the way out. So what are we doing, man? What 50 song are we doing?
Oh man,
are we doing it in the club? Are we keeping it on brand and doing it in the club? Should we do it in the club? In the club?
Old school. I used to jog to this song when I was like playing soccer when I was a kid. That's who I thought I was back in the days. If anybody wants to laugh.
What position?
Center mid.
Ah, nice, man.
Dude,
the most difficult position, I would argue.
Yes, I cannot run anymore.
I can't find the image, but I actually had a mixtape where I photoshopped the cover of my I photoshopped my face onto 50's when he was like had the big beefed up body on the thing. I was like, I'm 50 Cent. I'm a big strong rapper.
I mean that CD was really good.
It's great. I mean, listen, I'm still a 50 fan. Yeah, we'll do. You know what? I'm going to do a 50 medley for you at the end of the show. But anyways, Luigi, it was awesome having you on the show. We're going to play some 50 Cent to take you out. And this, like, the chat's going nuts all day, man. You got a lot of fans in here. We got Luigi is cute. I'm a big fan. You got your fans all up in here. You brought your fans. So we thank you for that. And this is Luigi, everyone. He's the head of DeFi at Avalabs. This has been a very illuminating conversation for me personally, because I always learn a lot when we have any Avalabs guests. So let me just thank you again for coming to the show. And please come back anytime, man.
Awesome, man. Thanks for having me, guys.
Man. Thank you. We'll see you around.
Yes, take care.
Peace.
We'll see you next time.